Cassandra Myles was a respected judge with a flawless reputation until her stepdaughter Emily uncovered a secret affair with a convicted felon that would lead to betrayal, murder, and the unraveling of a carefully constructed life built on lies. Judge Cassandra Myles was the kind of figure people admired from a distance. In the quiet, well-kept town of Blackridge, her name carried weight. She was always impeccably dressed, her words measured, and her decisions in the courtroom swift and seemingly just. For over 20 years, she presided over trials with a reputation for fairness and discipline. In public, she was a paragon of moral integrity. To her colleagues and neighbors, she seemed invulnerable, wrapped in the prestige of her black robe and the calm authority of her voice. But what no one knew, what not even those closest to her suspected, was that Cassandra was hiding a secret so dangerous it would eventually lead to the destruction of everything she had built. Her personal life had quietly unraveled after the sudden death of her husband 5 years earlier. He had collapsed from a heart attack during a morning jog, leaving behind Cassandra and his teenage daughter, Emily. The grief was sharp at first, but dulled into a cold distance over time. Cassandra, never a naturally warm person, found it difficult to connect with Emily. The girl was only 12 at the time and full of emotion, but Cassandra had no patience for displays of vulnerability. Instead of becoming closer through shared loss, the two drifted apart. Cassandra buried herself in her work, and Emily grew increasingly isolated. It was during this period of emotional numbness that Cassandra first encountered Darius Cole. He was in court for an armed robbery case, accused of holding up a gas station with a toy gun that had been spray-painted black. He had a long rap sheet, mostly petty crimes, but something about him stood out. He was confident, well-spoken, and charismatic in a way that made him seem smarter than his background would suggest. Cassandra sentenced him to 8 years, citing his prior convictions and lack of remorse. But there was something about him that lingered in her mind after he left the courtroom. A few months later, she requested a case review under the guise of legal procedure. That was the beginning. Their contact started with formal letters about appeals and case updates. Then it moved to emails sent through secure, monitored systems, messages that were carefully worded to avoid suspicion. Over time, the exchanges grew more personal. She began visiting him at Blackridge Correctional Facility under fake legal pretexts, sometimes reviewing cases that didn't exist. Prison guards assumed it was business. She was a judge, after all. No one questioned her. The relationship evolved into something dangerous. Cassandra arranged for Darius to be moved to a less restrictive wing of the facility. She used her influence to approve certain visitation privileges and even manipulated parole evaluations in his favor. Each step pushed her further away from legality and deeper into a life she couldn't explain or escape from. She told herself it was love, something she hadn't felt in years. But it was also a craving for control, power, and secrecy. No one knew. Or so she thought. Emily Myles had always sensed that something about her stepmother didn't add up. Since her father's death, the once lively home had grown quiet and cold. Cassandra rarely spoke to her unless it was absolutely necessary, and even then, it was with a tone of obligation, not care. Emily spent most of her time in her room, diving into books and online forums to escape the loneliness that seemed to saturate the house. Over the years, she learned to keep to herself, to observe instead of speak, and to pay attention to the small details others overlooked. That habit would eventually lead her to uncover the truth. It started with late-night phone calls. Cassandra, often stayed up long after Emily had gone to bed, pacing in her study and whispering into her phone. At first, Emily thought it might be court business. Judges often had long hours. But the more she listened, the stranger the calls became. Her stepmother's voice would shift, becoming softer, more emotional. She would laugh quietly, pause in long silences, and once Emily even heard her say, "I miss you too." That was when her curiosity turned to suspicion. One evening, when Cassandra had left to attend what she claimed was a judicial conference, Emily saw an opportunity. She knew where her stepmother kept her keys and had seen her lock a drawer in the study on multiple occasions. Her hands trembled as she slid the key into the lock, her heart pounding in her chest. Inside, she found what she hadn't even known she was looking for: a burner phone, hidden beneath folders and legal documents. The screen lit up with messages, and Emily's breath caught in her throat. The texts were unmistakably romantic and, worse, criminally compromising. They were from someone saved only as D, and the content left no room for doubt. There were talks of secret visits, promises of legal favors, and intimate exchanges that made Emily's stomach turn. Alongside the phone, she found printed emails, prison visitation receipts, and notes written in her stepmother's careful handwriting. Each piece was like a puzzle slowly coming together, revealing a picture Emily wasn't prepared to see. She spent hours reading everything, documenting what she found on a flash drive she kept in her backpack. Emily wasn't sure what to do with the information. Going to the police felt terrifying. Who would believe a teenager accusing a respected judge of something so outrageous? Still, she told a close friend at school, someone she trusted, and admitted she was planning to expose Cassandra. What Emily didn't realize was that her movements hadn't gone unnoticed. Cassandra had noticed subtle changes: locked drawers, left slightly open, her phone battery lower than it should have been, and Emily's nervous energy during dinner. It didn't take long for Cassandra to put the pieces together. She was a judge, after all, trained to detect lies and see through masks. 2 days after Emily's discovery, she vanished. Her bedroom was undisturbed. Her phone was left charging on her nightstand. Her school books were still in her backpack. It was as if she had simply stepped out and never returned. But those who knew her best knew she would never run away without saying something. And her flash drive, it was missing too. Emily's disappearance sent shockwaves through Blackridge. The community, known for its quiet streets and low crime rate, was suddenly thrust into the center of a mystery. The police responded quickly, launching a search that spanned forests, rivers, and abandoned buildings. Volunteers handed out flyers, with Emily's picture, bright eyes, a hopeful smile, plastered across storefronts and telephone poles. Vigils were held in the park near the courthouse. Candlelight flickered against the darkness as townspeople whispered theories, none daring to suspect the very woman who stood beside the grieving crowd, offering empty words of comfort. Cassandra Myles appeared devastated. She cried at press conferences, clutched Emily's school photo as though it meant everything to her, and thanked the public for their support. Her performance was so convincing that even experienced detectives struggled to find fault. She played the role of heartbroken stepmother flawlessly, but behind the tears was a practiced calm, a controlled face of someone used to crafting narratives in courtrooms. Her grief, though loud and visible, never touched her eyes. Still, questions began to surface. Detectives noted inconsistencies in her statements. She claimed to have gone to bed early the night Emily disappeared, but a neighbor reported seeing Cassandra's car leave the driveway after midnight. Surveillance footage taken from a gas station camera on the edge of town placed her vehicle near Blackridge Forest just before 1 a.m., an area restricted after dark due to wildlife and hazardous terrain. Cassandra claimed she had gone for a drive to clear her head, something she often did when stressed. But investigators weren't convinced. When police asked to search her home more thoroughly, Cassandra declined, citing her rights. She insisted she had nothing to hide, but her refusal only heightened suspicions. Law enforcement turned their attention to her professional records. That's when the irregularities began to surface. Visitation logs at Blackridge Correctional Facility showed Cassandra had been entering the prison more often than was typical for a judge. While judges occasionally visited correctional institutions for professional reasons, her frequency raised eyebrows. Then came the most puzzling discovery. Logs from the past 3 months had been deleted. Emails referencing her appointments with the prison had mysteriously vanished from the courthouse servers. Only someone with administrative clearance could have executed that kind of data wipe. Detectives dug deeper. Cassandra had signed off on unusual motions and documents involving Darius Cole, an inmate with a lengthy criminal record. She had approved an emergency motion to move him to a lower security wing, citing vague mental health concerns. The paper trail was thin, but pointed to preferential treatment. The case against Cassandra was growing, but it still lacked one critical element: evidence directly linking her to Emily's disappearance. Without a body or a witness, it was all suspicion and circumstantial proof. The law, which had always shielded Cassandra in her professional life, now became her armor in this personal crisis. The town, once trusting and proud of their distinguished judge, began to whisper. Rumors circulated through schools, coffee shops, and church groups. Some refused to believe Cassandra could be involved. Others were already convinced. But all of them asked the same chilling question. Where was Emily Myles? 4 weeks after Emily's disappearance, the case had gone cold. Police had exhausted their leads, and the media coverage had begun to fade. Cassandra returned to work, presiding over cases with the same stoic professionalism she was known for, as if nothing had changed. But beneath her composed exterior, tension brewed. She knew that Emily had found out about the affair, and she had taken steps to ensure the secret stayed buried, literally. What she didn't know was that Emily had left behind something more dangerous than her words: evidence. A break came unexpectedly when a hiker wandering near the outskirts of Blackridge Forest stumbled upon something half buried beneath the underbrush. At first, he thought it was just trash, but when he kicked away the dirt, he saw a backpack. It was dirty and weather-worn, partially torn, but inside were several items that made his blood run cold. There was a water-damaged notebook, a cracked phone and a flash drive in a Ziploc bag labeled, "If anything happens to me." Police were immediately called. Forensics confirmed the backpack belonged to Emily Myles. The notebook contained handwritten entries, Emily's observations, thoughts, and suspicions about her stepmother. She had documented the strange prison visits, recorded when Cassandra had left late at night, and even described finding the burner phone. Her words weren't definitive proof, but they painted a compelling story. The real revelation came from the flash drive. Investigators recovered video footage filmed on Emily's phone and backed up to the device. One video showed Cassandra entering the prison under a false alias, signing in at the desk, and walking into the visitation area. There, across the glass, sat Darius Cole. The camera didn't catch audio, but the body language was unmistakable. They were laughing, touching the glass between them, exchanging private glances. In another clip, Emily showed screenshots of emails, using her school laptop to narrate how her stepmother had sent romantic messages to an inmate and used her position to grant him illegal favors. Investigators were stunned. It was the break they had needed. With the videos, the journal, and the bag's discovery near a remote trail, far from any place Emily would go voluntarily, law enforcement obtained a full search warrant for Cassandra's property. This time, she couldn't refuse. Cadaver dogs. Hit on an area behind the judge's stately home, where the garden seemed recently disturbed. Detectives began digging, and beneath layers of stones, garbage bags, and soil, they found human remains. Forensics quickly confirmed what everyone feared. It was Emily. The condition of the body suggested she had been drugged and buried alive. Soil was found in her lungs. It was a horrifying detail, one that made headlines and shifted public opinion completely. The story of the missing teen turned into a nightmare no one had imagined. Cassandra's perfect image collapsed overnight. She was arrested at her home, still in her judicial robes, and led away in handcuffs as cameras rolled. The town of Blackridge watched in stunned silence. The judge they had trusted for years was now the prime suspect in a murder case that revealed betrayal, manipulation, and a darkness no one had seen coming. The courtroom that Judge Cassandra Myles once ruled over with calm authority was now the setting of her downfall. Her trial became one of the most publicized events in the state's history, drawing attention from national media outlets and igniting fierce debates about power, corruption, and the limits of trust. The irony of a judge standing trial for murder was not lost on anyone. People who had once admired Cassandra's composure now studied her every flinch, waiting to see cracks in the mask that had hidden her secrets for years. The prosecution built a meticulous case, presenting it in chilling detail. Emily's journal entries and the flash drive were the centerpiece, proof that she had uncovered Cassandra's illegal relationship with inmate Darius Cole. Forensic experts testified that the body had been buried alive, indicating not only premeditation, but a level of cruelty that stunned even seasoned investigators. Digital analysts walked the jury through deleted prison visitation logs, hidden emails, and financial records showing Cassandra had used personal funds to purchase a burner phone and make unauthorized transfers to accounts connected to Darius. Then came the biggest twist of the trial. Darius Cole himself was brought to the stand. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he agreed to testify against Cassandra. Calm and unapologetic, Darius described how he had manipulated the judge, feeding her just enough affection to keep her tangled in his web. He admitted to initiating the affair for personal gain, and though he denied involvement in Emily's death, his testimony painted a devastating picture. Cassandra, desperate for love and control, had risked everything for a man who saw her as nothing more than a tool. The defense attempted to portray Cassandra as emotionally unstable, still grieving her husband's death, and manipulated by a seasoned criminal. They claimed she never intended to harm Emily, suggesting the teen's death was a tragic accident. But the evidence told a different story. Surveillance footage, GPS data from Cassandra's car, and forensic traces from her gardening tools all pointed to careful planning. The timeline was airtight. The motive was clear. The courtroom fell silent as the prosecution closed with the haunting question: what kind of justice system protects a judge who buries her stepdaughter to protect a secret? After just 8 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict, guilty on all counts. Cassandra Myles was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She showed no emotion as the sentence was read, only lowering her eyes briefly before being escorted from the courtroom in shackles. The town of Blackridge was left reeling. A woman they had trusted to uphold the law had committed the most unforgivable crime imaginable. The courthouse, once a symbol of fairness, now stood as a reminder of how power can be corrupted from within. Emily Myles was buried in a small cemetery on the edge of town, her grave marked with flowers, letters, and candles from classmates and strangers alike. Her story, tragic, brave, and unforgettable, would not be forgotten. And the judge who tried to silence her would never see freedom again.